So let's talk about influence, specifically the art of influence, and when too much is just that, too much. So I used to read a lot of books on career management, communication, leadership. And, to be honest, most of their advice actually work, speak up more in meetings, dress the part, network, and so on. Even if they might seem engineered, unnatural, maybe fake, they work. And again, let's be clear here that the intention behind all this management advice is for you to get the job, get the promotion, get the contract by influencing your opponent in the short or long term. But it's not about making friends, it is about winning. It's not about being authentic or being real. And sometimes these pieces of advice are about looking the part and showing your accomplishment in the best light. So it's actually showing your true colors, but just better frame, better packaging, better narrative. It is really about what and who you are selling. And, I can totally get behind that. I can understand why being a good communicator and hence a story, especially if the story is truthful. But often it's not about that. It is calculated, it is unauthentic. And, after all, isn't it what business often is about? Selling a dream, making money out of it, whether that dream will materialize or not. And personally, having read a lot of these books, I can usually spot the win friend and influence people from miles away. And it does come down to context and intention. Again, if these techniques are used honestly to demonstrate the truth of a situation, that is great. Again, it is an improvement, and it is to show something that is true. But is it, on the other hand, another snake oil trick? A behavior that is being engineered in order to get to an end that is rarely in your or my benefit. And that, I think, this context and intention is very important. Are we using the tool as a command, or are you using a tool as an advisor? And that's very different, even if you might be using the same tool. And another point is, sometimes you see the dissonance between some people's true self and their action to be so obvious, or maybe the tricks of the effort behind the tricks are so visible that personally it makes my skin crawl. And to be honest, if you have already listened to this podcast, or maybe you know me, you know that I grew up in an environment where lies, gaslighting, manipulation were daily occurrences. So I am extremely intolerant regarding these behaviors. I think it's very insulting to people's agency and intelligence. So again, I am probably more sensitive than you might be on this topic. So let's talk about my best of or worst of the art of influence. So the first is saying my name repeatedly. That really goes on my nerve, I have to say. It really annoys me. It is not natural in a one-on-one conversation to repeat someone's name over and over again. I happen to know my name, so do you. Let's move on. So, and yes, I have read the studies saying that hearing your own names create connection, approval. This is the word we love the most in the entire world. But tell me something. If I'm dropping your name multiple times in a 60-minute meeting, wouldn't you place me in this used car saleswoman category? Remembering my name, your name, great. Giving credit using your name, my name, even better. But repeating it like a broken marketing script, I find it super cringe. So that's my first ad. The second is the lingering eye contact. And we can definitely thank Steve Jobs for taking this to Olympic level of intensity. So the whole don't blink, stare deeply into their soul thing, I personally don't like it, because if it's noticeable, that means it's unnatural. Normal humans alternate eye contact. When they speak to you, they don't stare at you like they're deciding whether your brain is going to be breakfast or dinner. And if, like me, you already have big eyes, that's not a good strategy unless your goal is to channel Medusa. I actually had to turn it down because I know it was really freaking people out. So I make sure not to stare at people too long, because with my eyes, I know sometimes that can be overwhelming. So I adjusted the strategy in the other direction. The other thing that annoys me is physical touch. And I have, again, no issue with someone, touching my shoulder or my arm to unphase a point, but it has to be natural and spontaneous, like, oh, you're touching a friend just to unphase a point. But, like the hesitant, slightly off timing reach, that's not connection. It's really someone who's trying to build rapport. And again, it shows. And, some people on top of that, they don't like to be touched. So that's another one that's annoying me. Another one is the perfect pitch, which you can call as well the performance. And this one deserves its own category. Because you can have multiple things that can, for me, go wrong. The perfectly calibrated voice level, the carefully engineered tone, the dramatic poses, the over-articulated executive presence. For me, it's just too perfect, it's too smooth, it's too rehearsed. I was actually at a conference not long ago, and there was that gentleman on stage, and I was just like, oh my God, perfect performance, but so calculated. It really give me, again, make my skin crawl. So, it feels less like a conversation. It feels more like a monologue that has been rehearsed in front of the mirror 52 times, and you can almost hear the internal checklist. Pause here for impact. Lower the tone to signal authority. Slight smile to appear warm but controlled. And suddenly, you're not listening, at least for me, I'm not listening to what is being said. I am watching the performance of someone trying to sound like someone important. And for me, that's the irony, is that the more someone tries to sound professional, the less I believe them. The more polished it gets, the more I feel detached from reality and suspicious. And again, the more intentional the delivery, the more I question the intention behind this message. Another one that is last but not least, and it is the perfectly rehearsed handshake. The right amount of grip, the right amount of pressure, optional shoulder or arm touch, everything calibrated perfectly to communicate confidence, dominance, warmth, or whatever trait is being performed that day. It's like the perfect smile. It has been practiced. And again, that level of effort to win people over, I find it really unattractive. It's like people extremely groomed, And I'm all for being polite, obviously, considerate, respectful, but this is not that. This is almost low-level gaslighting, and not necessarily in words, unless you're referring to the name repetitions, but in actions. Because the spirit is not to build connection. The spirit is to influence, is to shape, is to control, and that's a very different game, actually. I remember years ago, I was working in a large public company, and the CFO was like truly awkward dude, and by awkward, I mean, he didn't need to fake the unblinking stare. If I had learned he was a serial killer, I would not have needed much convincing, I can tell you that. So he had clearly read all the leadership all the leadership books, management, whatever. And I mean, he was the CFO of a large actually, it was not a financial company, actually, a large public company. But his interactions were so engineered. It was so like check the box. But actually, he made people super uncomfortable. Like the issue was that he didn't understand that these techniques are not one size fits all. If you're starting from a point where you're slightly awkward, well, maybe you don't need to do all of that, So, when I had to reduce eye contact, the guy doubled down. I'm like, okay, you're already scaring people off. I don't think you need that, So the result was really the opposite of what he was trying to achieve. It was, again, Olympic level cringe versus rapport, So, on the bigger picture side, maybe some people are positively influenced by this technique. I don't know, maybe they even enjoy them. Hearing their names 25 times make them sound important. I have no freaking idea. To me, it smells fake. It feels manipulative. I really don't like it. And for me, it's similar to, like the same picture pose that everyone uses to look their best, or the same outfit to signal belonging, or the same buzzwords. Yeah, it's just too much. It's just too much, too fake, And that's one of the things that's important when you're looking at being a better communicator, a better negotiator, which again doesn't mean that you're a con artist. You want to be careful because very quickly it doesn't sound, premium, important, elevated. It just sounds predictable, manipulative, and let's be honest, boring, because the reality is as well, we all read the same books, and if you have a bit of emotional intelligence, you can feel when someone is not authentic. So like all these magic tricks are not really magic tricks anymore. So that's what I wanted to share about this art of influence. So smooth, it is cringe. I hope you're enjoying it. Please like it if you do love it. Subscribe if you want to hear more from me. And thank you for being here. Talk to you next week. Bye.